The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to All You Can Eat. It's the podcast about deliciousness. I'm your host, Rob, the recommender, Rosenthal, and I am excited to be with you all here this evening, live, coming to you live. What is today? It's like the 28th of January. This is episode number 73, and it's because I just got back late last night, from Napa Valley, California, here in these United States, and that's why I'm excited, because I have plenty of recommendations about that part of the world, and I mean deliciousness. When I say deliciousness, sure, we're going to talk about some of the things that you can eat there, and certainly some of the things that you can drink there. But there's deliciousness in general to that part of the world. Now, if you've been following along, last year was incredible for me because, in spite of the fact that I generally travel a lot, it was extraordinary last year. I ate in 13 countries, and most of them, a dozen of them, were foreign countries, some of which I had even gone to more than one time. But here I am back in these United States, and excited to have spent the last 4 days out on the West Coast, specifically with a flight to San Francisco, followed by 2-3 days, let's call it, in the Napa Valley. And then maybe a 24-hour overnight there in City by the Bay, San Francisco. So I have plenty to tell you about and a lot to recommend. And it starts off with the idea that, and I've always said this, I mean, I've been, in spite of being in so many places, fortunately, I mean, I'm just blessed in that regard that I get to move around and see and experience some things. In this country of ours, these United States, I've always said that my favorite part, if I can say favorite, I think the most beautiful part of this country, and we're blessed. I mean, truthfully, there's a lot of beauty that we have in this country, all around, in the middle, in the mountains, in the valleys, on the coasts, in the south, in the north, the east, west, wherever. I love the part of the world that you can see, starting off in San Francisco, whether you go northbound, into Napa, into Sonoma, into that part of the world up there, or whether you go southbound and visit places like Monterey or Carmel or Big Sur on the Pacific Ocean. I mean, there's beauty in both directions, up and down. The flight to San Francisco, now again, I'm coming to you from New York City live right now, midwinter, right, January 28th. And, here it's like, 35, figure 35 degrees. Middle of the winter, almost halfway through, thankfully. About 35 degrees here, relatively dry, not problematic. San Francisco, you're really kind of more looking at, 55. It's not as cold out there, although it's super kind of overcast, and obviously there's fog. But then when you get up north, we flew to San Francisco, and that's a commitment. Honestly, I know that when you contemplate a vacation, you go, what kind of vacation do I want to have? Do I want to, chill by the pool? That's one kind of vacation. Do I want to sit in the sun at a beach and drink some frozen daiquiris by the pool? Great. Do I want to go skiing? Do I want to go hiking? Is it going to be a biking vacation? Is it a cultural trip? We choose. Am I going alone? Am I going with the girl? Am I going with the spouse? Am I going with, kids? All of these questions, of course, come into play. And the San Francisco thing, and I didn't fly out there to spend time in San Francisco. I just used San Francisco because that was the airport for me to use as a gateway, if you will, into another part of the world. So rented a car. And again, the car rental decision is one that you make because you go, I like the idea of having the freedom of kind of driving up a highway and going into a location that maybe is a couple hours away, one way or the other, 100 miles here, 50 miles there, whatever it is. I like driving. I mean, so if you like driving, this trip starts with a flight to San Francisco, which is not short from the East Coast, right? That's your transcontinental. That's your 6 hours, 5.5, 6. By the time you get to the airport early and you get the car and you get somewhere, you're traveling a good part of that day. So I like the idea of leaving early because, why? Because I was having lunch at 1 o'clock. Again, I pick up 3 hours. I was having lunch at 1 o'clock in a place called Marshall, California. Why Marshall? Because north of San Francisco, you could drive directly to Napa. I don't know, 70 miles maybe? Like an hour, figure an hour and a half, depending on traffic, right? But instead, I am a huge fan of a road west of that, eventually getting my way to US 1, driving along a coastline and passing the Hog Island Oyster Company, because now I'm in oyster territory. I'm approaching Tamales Bay. I'm in a car, northbound San Francisco, 50, 60 miles, an hour and 10 a drive-in, nice driving, beautiful things to see in this part of the world. And I'm heading toward Tamales Bay, which is loaded with oysters. Reason number 2 to consider this part of the world, because even before I get into Napa, you got a whole area kind of excited about oysters. In fact, the reason that I am driving to Marshall, California, is to go to a restaurant called Tony's. Established, 50 years ago, let's say, by some Croatian immigrant fishermen. And the place, is classic. I mean, situated right on Tamales Bay. So the oysters that they talk about local, see the table or whatever it is. I mean, ship to table. It could be whatever you call it, what you want. You're literally on the very water from which originate the oysters in Tamales Bay. And I have been before to Tony's, and the reason that I returned to Tony's is because the first time that I went, I fell in love, sitting outside, not outside, I was actually sitting inside, but it feels outside because you're overlooking the water. And I know I'm having oysters. What I didn't know I was going to be having were what were called barbecued oysters. Now, as an oyster fan, as an aficionado, as a purist, generally speaking, you slurp oysters right out of the shell. Less is more. Maybe it's a touch of lemon, maybe you like a little bit of horseradish or a mignonette or whatever it is your thing is. Oysters, generally speaking, you're just popping them down raw. But here, the grill happened to have been in the very same room where we were seated overlooking the water. And, you drive for an hour, it's lunchtime, or maybe it's later in the day, so you order a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, whatever your thing is. And there's a guy in there, and he's grilling oysters, but these big, fat oysters with what they call a deep cup. I'd never seen oysters that was so, where the shell was so deep. But what that deep shell invited, was a combination of butter, fresh garlic, and barbecue sauce, sitting on the grill, bubbling until it's bubbling. And then it comes to the table so freaking hot. In those days, I believe it was an order of 6. Comes so hot that you can't really touch the shell because it's a little too hot at the moment. It was sitting on fire just moments ago. And the first thing you do is you can see it bubbling, the oyster still, when it gets to your thing. You can see the glistening of the butter. You can see the squeeze of where the fresh garlic was pressed out. You can smell the barbecue sauce. And so it's red, right? It's a little bit tomatoey, and it's a little bit on the sweet, and it's a little bit on the vinegar, right? I mean, it's just, I salivate now. And we ended up, the bride and I, having, in those days, I believe it was something along the lines of 3 or 4 orders of those, interspersed with just the oysters coming right out of the bay there, raw oysters, like palate cleansers. I mean, we ate, I'm not saying we ate 6 dozen, even if it were 3 dozen, whatever it was, we ate a lot of oysters. And I loved that place. It was the first thing I ever wrote about. Now, when I come back, and that was a long time ago, let's call it a decade. So this time around now, it's a long time later. I had been once in between, thought it was also super good. This time around, there had been a little change. I guess the owners sold, and who did they sell to? They sold to the owners of the Hog Island Oyster Company, which is a big operation out there, and that's fine. They immediately renovated the place. That grill is no longer in the back room. The grill is now in the kitchen, which I guess is where most grills go. But the place still looks good, and it's still situated right on the water, and the service is still pleasant, and the food is still delicious. I'm not going to say to you that the barbecue oysters this time around were as revelatory, as inspirational as they were on my first trip and maybe my second, but I'm not complaining either. And the raw oysters were just as good. They were perfect because I think right now, mid-January, water's nice and cold out there. The oysters were delicious, served with a lovely kind of their mignonette, which is like vinegar, black pepper, generally red wine vinegar, black pepper predominantly. They put some fresh herbs in it that I thought were very good. Maybe some green, like chives. Anyway, delicious. Glad to be there. Noticed, of course, on the way out that there are other places, including the very own Hog Island Oyster Company, and then a couple of side of the road kind of operations that were also doing barbecued oysters. So if and when I go back, I'm ready to try some other places. But I'm not. I would have no problem recommending Tony's. A lot of people in there having the chowder, which looked great, and people love that. There's plenty of good looking food in that place, and I'm always happy to be there. Drove the coast, drove up US 1. Now here's the thing. I'm pretty far west. I want to move east because I'm going towards Napa, and I'll have to at this point pass through Sonoma. Excuse me for a sip here. Why do you go to this part of the world? Because it's beautiful. One of the things that makes it beautiful, by the way, is that it's one of the biggest wine growing regions, certainly in our country, but in the world. What are the top 3 wine producing countries in the world? It's Jeopardy. You have 30 seconds. Okay, 3 top wine producing countries in the world. Number 3 is France. I don't suppose this is a surprise, except you thought that it was going to be number 1. Second largest wine producing country in the world it's Spain. That's right. And the first largest wine producing country in the world is Italia. It is Italy. But right after those 3 comes the good old United States of America, a number 4 wine producing region in the world. And I don't know, a vast majority of the wine in this country comes from that part of the world. Could be 75, 80, up to 90%. Most of the wine out of the United States of America, wine growing is done out there. And so my point is only that it's beautiful. You go to this part of the world, your own country, and you drive through beauty. Now it starts for me with the ride from Marshall to Petaluma, which is in Sonoma, a little town in Sonoma. And I have taken this road before. It's called the Marshall Petaluma Highway. And every time that I'm on this road, I can't even believe how stunning it is. And the thing about this road, I think that struck me, yes, it's undulating. Yes, there are hills and valleys and little kind of, I wouldn't call them mountains, but you're in the hills. And then you'll see animals, whether you see cow, you see sheep, you see horse, you see chicken. but the coloration is, well, if there were no signs, you could be in Umbria. I mean, you could be in Italy. You could be driving around almost anywhere. It's just stunning. I like the ride coming the other direction, Petaluma to Marshall, because as you get closer to the sea, you get that kind of ocean air, that mist, that smell. Plus, I know I'm on the way to Marshall, so I'm having some barbecued oysters. In this case, I went the other direction, so we're driving from Marshall to Petaluma. And it's a stunning, stunning ride on the Marshall-Petaluma Highway. And now, that ride, let's call it an hour max, puts you into Sonoma County, which is the county that is right next to Napa. And Sonoma is certainly not as famous as Napa when it comes to wine, although there's a ton of wine there, ton. The Sonoma is certainly more farm land. You'll see not only vineyards and wineries, but you'll see an awful lot of other farms. There's Lower Key over there in Sonoma, although there certainly are towns. And I didn't visit it this time. There's a lovely little town called Healdsburg up north of in Sonoma. And Healdsburg cool. I mean, like tourist, but beautiful, lovely, charming, like a place that you would want to go if you felt like exploring that part of the world and you had time. Our time, allowed me to drive past Sonoma and into Napa. And once you're in Napa, you know you're in wine country. There's just not a question about that, because everywhere you look, there are vineyards growing. Names you've heard of, some you haven't. And the thing about Napa is the shape of it is interesting. It's long, but not wide. It's long, but it's tall, but very thin, and it's like it's like 20 miles north south, and maybe 5 miles across the Napa Valley. Really kind of enclosed by two main roads. You have the 29, that's a highway that runs north-south. You have the Silverado Trail, also runs north and south. And then, 5 miles across. And within that kind of however many square miles that is, I mean, obviously, that adds up to 100. I don't know the exact square mileage, but I'll tell you, anywhere you look, and then the places that you don't see, they're growing grapes out there. And world-class grapes. I mean, however many years ago it was that it was discovered that a wine in a blind taste test from a Cabernet from California could beat a good French wine, all of a sudden, Napa's on the map. Napa's the real deal. And part of the reason you go there is, as I said, sure, it's beautiful, but you could go just because you're interested in knowing a little bit more about wine. Because everywhere you turn, there's a place that you can go take a tour or go take a tasting. Forget the tour. I mean, I don't mean forget the tour. I mean, sure, take a tour if you want. But the vast majority of people are there because they're going to sample some grapes. I guess the one thing I'll tell you before we pass through here is that there are tastings that are public tastings, in that you can pull up in your car and go in, and used to be free. It no longer is. You pay your, 30, 40, 50, whatever, however much the charge is, and you sit around, you're going to taste, 4 or 5 wines that they produce right there at that winery. So there are places that you can go because it's open to the public. Then there are other places that you can go because you have called ahead and made a reservation. They're limited in the number of people they can take, so the way they handle that is you make a reservation. Where would you make a reservation? That's not the nature of this show. There's a way to kind of, do your own due diligence on that one. But, you don't have to, right? You can pop into any of the ones that are open to the public. You can make a reservation at those that are reservation only, and some of the better ones are, and then some of the better ones are also perfectly public. And then there's another whole way of approaching this part of the world from a wine perspective, which is that you can go with people who kind of have joined the wine clubs at various wineries. And the deal there basically is that for whatever the price is that you join, you get that back in wine if you commit to buying, whatever the case or 2 cases is a year. But the access, it's all about the access, because that gets you tastings with your buddies if and when you want, and at a higher level. And so I was lucky this time around because we ended up with some friends who had memberships at 4 or 5 vineyards. So our day was planned. But even before we got to that day, because that was only a Sunday, and I still had all of Friday and all of Saturday to kind of mess around Napa Valley. Should point out that I stayed very close to the town of Napa. So you have Napa Valley representing the whole, and you also have the town of Napa, lovely little town of Napa, sweet. You have a town in there called Yountville, also lovely place, and home, by the way, of some serious food, including, you got the French Laundry, considered by many to be the finest restaurant in America. Chef Thomas Keller, considered to be one of the greatest chefs of all time. So they got that over there in Napa Valley. Places that you could. So, and that's the second reason. I mean, you go out there because I'll tell you something, man. These people eat. I mean, you know what goes with good wine? Really good food. The life out there looks to me like I could move right in. Napa is beautiful, and it's delicious. It's just, there's a lot of good eating going on. A lot. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to tell you about my Delicious. But it's another reason that you go on that trip. You go, it's beautiful out here. There's a lot of wine to either look at or sample for sure. The food is fantastic. And you also go because you go, hey, wait a second. This is a nice place to be outside in the middle of the winter. It's 60 degrees up there. Okay? It was cooler in San Francisco for whatever reason. I'm in Napa. It's the middle of the winter. It's 60 to 62 every day. Sometimes the sun shines. Sometimes it's overcast. I hiked. We biked. So another reason that you could enjoy Napa is because you could be outside. You could be outside. You can get yourself on a bike. We did. I'll tell you about it. Or you can go for a hike, or you can go for a walk. I'm sure there are places, I don't know, it's not my thing. I'm sure there are places where you could play around a golf, or ride a horse, or go in a hot air balloon for a tour. And that's another thing, by the way. You don't have to drive there, right? Because transportation to Napa is easy. And then once you're in there, suppose you go, look, I don't want to be drinking, 13 glasses of wine. Not glasses. I don't want to be drinking wine all day and driving, and I don't blame you. Don't do it. But boy, do they make it easy to take you around and see some things. Get on the train. They have a train, actually, that goes from stop to stop, like the wine train, or any one of 100 different tours. Anything from you getting in like a van with 12 people, to a limo with 2. It's just, it's an area where people are making a ton of tourist money on touring you around wineries, and that's not a bad way to go. It's a great way to go now that I think of it. Checked into the Embassy Suites Hotel in Napa. I would say 1 mile away from downtown Napa. Embassy Suites is operated by Hilton. You'll find basically that every hotel is owned by some giant hotel operation right now. Hilton, I guess, is one. Marriott is one, etc., etc. Point is, it was well priced, and I don't remember the exact amount of money, but I felt like the price was good. And what do you get at Embassy Suites? Well, here's what you get. I was like super impressed, right? You're going to get a suite, so it's a little bit roomy, right? The bedroom's not enormous, the living room's not giant, but you put the two of them together, you got a nice sized room. You have a suite, in fact. Suite has a refrigerator in it, of course. I mean, like a mini refrigerator. And I guess the bride must be like Hilton Honors. So they were like, oh, Hilton Honors, you have unlimited premium snacks going to be sent to your room. Feel free to take whatever you want. No charge. And if you want more, just give a call. Well, hello. I think I might have gone through 11 bags of peanut M&Ms, just as an aside. Embassy Suites. Yeah, I like that. Oh, wait, as if that wasn't it. This is the thing I think that I was most impressed with. Yeah, sure, they got a pool. Gym's not impressive, but yeah, there's a lovely pool. And then it turns out breakfast is part of the price. Now, I've been to, well, there's a couple things. You know, the normal hotel breakfast at like a regular old kind of hotel can be very expensive. Then you have the hotels that are saying, hey, breakfast is included, and you go up to the buffet, and you know those eggs were made last night. You know what I mean? That giant tank of scrambled eggs and whatever, and like, okay, well, this was not that. I'm at the Embassy Suites now. I shouldn't be excited about the Embassy Suites when I've eaten in some of the finest restaurants in Napa Valley. But when you show up in the morning, right? I mean, sure, there's the coffee thing, and then there's the fresh fruit. There's the oatmeal. Okay, that's good. I got that. There's all the different breads and the toast. Okay, I got that. And then there's a giant kind of open kitchen where three women are making eggs to order and pancakes. Right? How do you want it? What'd you say? Vegetarian egg white? Yeah, you got it. You want these pancakes here? You want some blueberries in them? Sure. You want some salsa? How about bacon? Would you prefer bacon or... I mean, that was all part of the deal. And as if that wasn't enough, it turns out that every night they do a cocktail party, like a happy hour for an hour and a half, and they pour the drinks. They don't charge you. I'll go back there in a heartbeat. Price was right. A mile from town. Good service. All the M&Ms you can eat, and then food and drink. I mean, hello. Dinner that first night was at a restaurant called Torc, T-O-R-C. Been there a while. Comes highly recommended. And I popped in to discover that their menu, I'm looking for it right now. Where did it go? Menu. No, not that one. Bistro. No, not that one. Certainly not that one. And I know why I can't find the menu. Stay with me here. I have a menu from Torc. Yeah, here. That's what I'm looking at right here. Right. So the place is very nice to look at. It's, the glass, you can look through the windows and you can see kind of happy people over at the bar and throughout the restaurant. And there are chandeliers and super high ceilings and open kitchen. And so it gives off a very nice vibe on kind of like one of the main, maybe even Main Street on there in the town of Napa. And the menu, you want to sit at the bar. I mean, I suppose you have to make a res. It's one of those. But if I can get myself a couple of bar seats, as we like, did that. And then you can see, maybe you want that hamoni iberico, or maybe you're looking for some deviled eggs, or marinated, olives, or, that kind of thing. I am checking out the menu, and they'll have that hamachi crudo there, that, when they do that, yellowtail, it's raw, fine. I see something on the menu that attracts me. I'm going to come back to that. There's 5 different pasta dishes. That's nice. I see today that they have truffles. If you wanted a splurge, you could have those put on. And then the main courses are going to run you, as they do these days, 30, 35, whatever it is, but it could be cod, scallops, beef, steak, etc. Lovely sides. Now, I can't help but looking at the sides. Sure, you got porcini mushrooms. That looks good. But then I see charred treviso. Now, treviso is a kind of green, a lettuce, really, and charred, so I know that they're going to put it on the grill. It's served with pickled ramps, blue cheese, and a beef jus, right? So, what does that mean to me? All it meant to me was that I was going to start with it, because that appealed to me. The idea of charring the lettuce, the fact that it was coming with kind of a beef jus, like literally it was, they had given it a little bit of a taste of beef, great. What else did I say that it had in it? Little chunks of blue cheese, that's not going to hurt you. And pickled ramps. Well, pickled anything is kind of fun, because it's exciting to the palate, especially when the other part of a dish can be rich in umami, whether it's from the blue cheese, from the charron, the Treviso, from the beef jus. Anyway, I have it to start. I'm happy with that. It's like, it's the answer to how can I make vegetables taste like beef? Well, it's as close as you can get. It's like a meaty thing. Had it because I really was in the mood for that. And I'm not going to have pasta. I'm not really in the mood for something big. But on that appetizer menu, my friends, is beef tongue, black garlic, a fig cellulose kimchi savory herbs. Now, I don't know what a fig cellulose kimchi is, but I don't care because I like kimchi, pickled veg. And this one looks like it's going to have a little sweetness thrown in from the fig. Savory herbs, sure, that's generic, fine. Black garlic, that sounds good. Beef tongue is what I'm excited about. I don't know how it's going to come, but I want it. I get it. Here's the headline from that. Americans should eat more tongue. It's another one of those foods that people don't have because the concept of it grosses them out. Not the actual product, the thought of eating the tongue. I can't change your mind. I would, though, if I could, recommend this one. They took it, the tongue that is cooked it, smoked it, probably, whatever they did was chopped to the point where it was reformed. So it's coming to me in the shape of more like, it looked like almost like a corn dog in the sense that it was coated and deep fried. And it came with, I can't wait to have it again. The beef tongue to me, if I was sitting next to someone and they said, "What are you eating?" and I would have said brisket, they would not have known the difference. That's the thing. That's the point I'm trying to make. I don't want to fool anybody. I'm all about full disclosure. But man, this could have been brisket. It was fantastic. And of course, the wine in the place was extraordinary. So Torc, T-O-R-C, an easy recommendation, delicious food. From there, they sell the cannabis. They don't just sell it. I mean, it's legal in California. Your marijuana, your THC, your CBD, the whole deal. I passed the dispensary there in Napa. So figured, what the hell, let's go see what's for sale here in the dispensary in Napa. And it doesn't necessarily have to be for the buzz. You could go in for some of that CBD or whatever is your thing. They have the edible product there that has either the THC or the CBD or both of them. They have what you would call a leaf, the actual flower that you can smoke. But here's the thing. I wouldn't really know that, would I? Because they didn't let me in. I'm at a dispensary in the county of Napa, and they said to me, "Where's your license?" And I'm like, "What license? You mean my driver?" No. Your medical marijuana license, say they. I don't have that. What if I had one from New York? I don't. That wouldn't work here. You need a California medical marijuana license. Hey, you know what? We're closing in a half hour, they say. But you could probably get a license within 15 minutes online. God, the internet technology. All right, let's see what that works out like. And 20 minutes later, I had a license. I was inside looking at product. Do you need a medical marijuana license in the state of California? No, because you could go into Los Angeles, go look for MedMen, the dispensary, walk into MedMen, buy a couple of grams of whatever your favorite weed or gummy is, and walk out, and it's fine. Well, not so the case in Napa, because it's a medical marijuana facility. You need to have a license. Got a license, shop for product. Don't forget, you'd have to pay in cash, but of course there's no problem because it's a cash machine both inside and outside the facility. Next morning was not raining, 60 degrees, rented a bike. 2 bikes, because there's 2 of us, obviously. The bike can be rented either in downtown Napa or downtown Yountville. And you make a decision based on the maps. But, if you like biking, man, you're going to go to the really outstanding, what do they call this? Napa Valley Bike? Yeah. Napa Valley Bike Tours and Rentals. Both owned, whether you're in Napa or in Yountville, both owned by the same company, and they're great. Good service, super good bikes. You have a choice. You can pedal your own. You can get a different one that has a fat tire. You can maybe find a bike for two. Then they're very popular these days are the e-bikes, so they're enabled. You know what I mean? Get you a little extra juice. You don't have to pedal so hard when you're going up the hill. You have the e-bikes over there. Great. Love this thing. And the bride and I went on a 20-mile, bike ride, passing essentially 100 different vineyards along, vineyards and wineries, and it's just fantastic to do this. Now, part one is that you have to, kind of enjoy the idea of biking, and part two, full disclosure, is that you're on one of those two main roads I mentioned. You're either on the Silverado Trail or you're on 29. I mean, yeah, you can kind of crisscross and back all you want, but at the end of the day, to go north and south in a county that runs north, you're going to have to be on one of the big roads. The shoulders are wide, so that's good for you, but you have to be okay with the fact, with your helmet on, that cars are going to be blowing by at 50 miles an hour. In fact, the one advice that I got, and I will pass on, is better to do it early so that the cars blowing by you at 50 miles an hour on the highway are not the ones that are coming from having spent the last couple of hours drinking samples of wine at one of the local vineyards. Now, I don't want to put any kind of negativity on this at all. I did it. I loved every minute of it, and would do it all over again. I'm just forewarning you that you got to be good with the wide shoulder and cars zipping by in their lane at a relatively quick pace. One of the things that you will have, you can make the decision too, by the way, that you want to bike. We skipped we didn't stop in one place to drink. We knew that we were going to do that the following day. So we just drove by vineyards, and then on, you take the side roads, and it's just lovely. But, by all means, feel free to pull up the bike, pop in, go for a sampling, and go on your way. There's a place in Oakville, by the way, a pretty famous place called the Oakville Grocery Store, I believe they call it. Holy wow. You want one of those in your own neighborhood, because the Oakville Grocery Store is the kind of place you would expect to see in Napa Valley, in that most of the product that they're selling in there is like super, gourmet, high-end stuff. Beautiful crackers that are loaded with either, I don't know, olives or perhaps figs, and lovely nuts, and samples of that finocchio, that kind of salami, little tiny samples of that, beautiful samples of the bread and the olive oil, because there's a ton of great olive oil that comes from this part of the world as well, from California, and then there's the sandwiches, like the whole sandwich roster, the kind of sandwiches you look at it and you go, I could have any of those. And then you go outside, because you have to take a little walk outside to go to the restroom. And there it is, the brick oven pizza heating up. So they're going to make some pizza fresh right out there in the brick oven. And right next to it, a couple of frying stations, because they're frying a chicken. And inside, some baked goods, including yodels. Did you ever have yodels as a kid? Cake, sandwich in kind of a white cream, and then chocolate dipped. I mean, really, I would have one now. Number one, because I'm hungry, and number two, they were great. Well, in the Oakville Grocery Store, my friends, are yodels for today. Yodels Napa Valley style. Yodels are probably 20 times whatever the price was of those back then, but there were some good-looking yodels in there. That's in Oakville on the bike ride. Now you're hungry, right? Now you're starting to get hungry because you bike for 3 hours. It's 1 o'clock. And so you go into the Oxbow Market, Oxbow, recommendation number 300. It's become maybe the primary tourist destination in this part of town, the Oxbow Market in Napa. And the reason for that is because it's a delightful, glorious little marketplace filled with a combination of kind of gourmet foods, as well as booths and restaurants and tables where you can sit and enjoy them, right? So in one corner, Maybe there's the cheese store, and you can sit at their bar, the counter there, and have cheese and wine. And sitting across from that in another corner is the Hog Island Oyster Company. Maybe there's 40 seats in there and a line. And here's the best thing about the line at the Hog Island Oyster Company. While you're waiting on the line, they come over and they go, would you like to order a glass of wine? Yes, I would. Yes, I would. And then there's the butcher's shop where you can, I thought this was fairly inventive, where you can order whatever steak it is that you want them to grill. Then you can sit down and have that. And then there's the place next door there, which is just selling spices. And then there's another one that's making pizza. And then there's the dudes that are doing the, what are they doing at Oxbow? They're doing the, breakfast. Mexican is doing breakfast, and then somebody else has gluten-free, baked goods. Oh, and then why don't you have a sample from the chocolate company of the cherry chocolate fudge? I would have brought it back home, except they wouldn't let me through security. I don't check a bag. And then around the corner from the Oxbow, when I say around the corner, I mean like 12 feet, is the Model Bakery, famous for the English muffins that it makes every morning, and then it sells out. And then next to the Oxbow, and next to the Model Bakery is the Fatted Calf, where they do takeout charcuterie, right? So that's a fancy French way of saying that they're making salami, sausage, prosciutto, pate. And one day I walked in there, not on this trip, but they had just brought out this enormous chunk of porchetta. You know, that roast pork where the skin is crackling? Oh, man. And there's rosemary and garlic. And I saw that come out warm. I ordered it, not on this one, but on the last time I was there for some kind of food and wine festival. And they just kind of sliced it into a metal container, right? Because this is what, it's takeout. I ate it right there. I could barely make it to the table to sit. This time around, I'm in Oxbow. Pop over to the counter over at the Hog Island Oyster Company, because you could, if you are the oyster lover, easily sit down and enjoy some West Coast oysters in season, like in prime season, with a glass of whatever your thing is. It's a Sancerre, it's a Sauvignon Blanc. Maybe you go with Chablis. All good. I didn't have any oysters, and that's because they had offered on the menu that day. I don't know if they do it every day. Manila clams with some ham hock and garlic butter in a smoked fish stock, some fennel cilantro mix, Calabrian chili oil. And it's beautiful to look at. And the color of the broth is like a light pumpkin soup color. And the clams themselves are delicious. And that ham hock that I mentioned comes off in pieces, little chunks of maybe the best ham you've ever had. And thankfully, they give you a piece of San Francisco sourdough bread, so you're using that to sop up all the juice in this thing. And you're having wine, and you're sitting there. You're inside, but you're in this lovely food hall. And life at that moment is feeling very good to you, as it should. And they also have on the menu steamed mussels with sausage in saffron butter, fennel, piquillo peppers, and micro cilantro. Stunning. Delicious. Again, I didn't leave any broth behind. I just ate it as if it were a soup at the end. After sucking out the mussels from their shells, whatever broth was left in there gets sopped up and souped up. Oh, man, that was good. That was as good as anything that I ate, I think, all weekend over at the Hog Island Oyster Company in the Oxbow Food Market. What happened after that? Where were we? We were, yeah, right, that was the Oxbow. That night, when you're in this part of the world, these people live well out there. They're outside, they're moving around, they're drinking wine, they're eating good food. And it should not be surprising that you're going to find places out there that cater to kind of the spa lifestyle. You may be able to go to a place and get a massage. You can probably go to a place and get fit. Whatever is your spa pleasure, it exists. It's one of the, this place is built for tourism. They may be selling a ton of wine, but this is a good place to visit because there's an infrastructure in place to enjoy pretty much anything that you want to. We went for a foot massage. That was fine. Dinner that night in Yountville at a restaurant called, what's it called? Perry Lang? Is that what they call that thing? Perry Lang. Let me take a look. Oh, no. I'm at the menu. Yeah, Perry Lang's. How do you like that? Perry Lang's is interesting because Adam Perry Lang is a meat guy who is now in some type of venture here with the Thomas Keller Restaurant Group. This is the member of the group that does that specializes in the meat, Perry Lang's. Again, went for the bar. You're going to get professional cocktails. That was delicious. The wine lists at these places, and I forgot to mention that even at the first restaurant in Napa, which was the just the wine at these places is just fantastic. The lists are extensive. You can try. You can learn, you can love. Easy. Same thing here at Perry Lang's. You're in wine country, giant wine list, but that shouldn't prevent you from having a cocktail. I know that I did. Lovely looking dining room, fireplace back there. I like a fireplace, but I like it when it's real. I didn't get close enough on this one because we sat at the bar, but it's a good looking, it's a handsome steak place, steak place, vibe, atmosphere, a richness, a separation between tables, nice lighting, an elegance. You could have steak. I did not. You could have steak tartare. I did not. I always like to have a little something with the cocktail, and I see on the menu they have local radishes with a green goddess dressing. I'll tell you what, bring that over, because why? I like fresh radishes. They're just they're palate stimulators. But their green goddess, man, that dressing was fantastic. Herbs and all the other stuff. I kept the dressing to dip other stuff in when those radishes were long gone. Have yourself again any kind of salad. Maybe you get yourself like they do in these steak places, some grilled thick cut bacon with a maple glaze. Maybe you're going to come in here and go for the chicken cooked under a brick. That can't be bad. I know that their French fries were pretty decent because I had those with my St. Louis pork ribs, all served with crispy garlic and a peach barbecue sauce. Those went down easy. I'm going to be honest with you. St. Louis pork ribs, crispy garlic, peach barbecue sauce, $19. Fancy restaurant with a cocktail. Once again, my friends, feeling good about that. Adam Perry Lang's there in Yountville. No problem with that. The next day, as I mentioned, was from 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon drinking wine with our friends who belonged, as I said, to a number were members at a number of these places, so it's great. Anytime that you have kind of internal access, basically, this is access. This is what's meant by access. Politics has access. So does touring around the Napa Valley. It got us into outstanding vineyards, delicious winery, beautiful tastings. I'll shout out Inglenook because that's the one that's owned by Francis Ford Coppola, and I'll tell you, wow! You just go there because it's stunning. You got to see this thing: the chateau, the building, the grounds, the anything that you can. I honestly, I'd have no problem. Our tasting was in a lovely little room. It was delicious. They have great cheese there. Some of the wines were outstanding. Like a mini museum. It's a super operation. Chateau. Yeah, so that one they've renamed. I think he used to call it Niebaum Coppola. I think they changed the name now to Inglenook, but not hard to find Francis Ford Coppola's place, and worth going to. And if I had kids, I would go there. He likes kids, so there's kids playing outside, and I don't know. That was I felt good about that. I'm trying to think. Sorry for that. I'm trying to think of the first place. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't have to recommend specific vineyards and wineries. They're all lovely and interesting in their own way. And if you feel like it, go float around and try a couple. Float around and try a couple of the ones that are, open to the public. See if you find something. You're going to be there for more than one day. You may pass a vineyard and go, wow, that place looks good. And that sign out said private tours. You have to call for reservation, and you pop back the next day with your reservation. I don't know how hard or easy it is to make, but you want to try some wine, you want to try some good wine, you're in the right place. That night back in Yountville for a place called Bistro Gentil, Genty. I'm in love. Why am I in love at Bistro Gentil? Because I went to French cooking school. And I was taught how to make classic French food, the kind of French food that they serve in your bistros, your brasseries. Bistro Gentil is a bistro, meaning, tables, charm, not enormous. But I'll tell you what, there was plenty of room. I mean, it's not a small place, but it was composed of different rooms. So each was lovely in its own way. And these people have been doing this a while. I can't tell you. I mean, I could press a couple of buttons, but this is not a new establishment. This is old school, old world, classic French cooking. Like, for example, tomato soup in a puff pastry, steak tartare, cassoulet, steak frite, where your prime rib eye steak comes with French fries and a béarnaise sauce. Coq au vin, beef bourguignon, right? That's what you're eating. That's the kind of food. I started off, you should know, with two things that are just so great that I get excited thinking about them. Yeah, they have escargot. I didn't have it. Yeah, there's some duck confit, and yeah, there's smoked salmon in the house, and country-style pâté. But I'll tell you what else there is. There's roasted bone marrow, which the bones come to the table, and you scoop out essentially the marrow, and you smear them on some crusty bread that they bring with you. And then that night, I'm not seeing it on the menu right now. Oh yeah, lighter side. That made me laugh. I hit the lighter side menu. Yeah, mussels, in a vin rouge. But here's the thing that, here's the thing that I got excited about. And again, it's kind of the headline. Langue d'agneau, warm lamb tongue and potato salad. I just want to tell you about the lamb tongue. Say what you will. Served with like a beautiful Dijon kind of dressing. Oh my God, that was good. Main course, coq au vin, classic, chicken, mushrooms, apple smoked bacon, red wine stew. Come on, glorious food. Dark. I mean, that stew, man. That red is like. It goes beyond burgundy. It's almost like chocolatey. It's fantastic. Chicken stew, French style. And then tasted their beef bourguignon made with short ribs, roasted carrots, pearl onions. What do you have for dessert when you're having that kind of food? What you have for dessert is profiteroles, little pastries filled with vanilla ice cream and chocolate, warm chocolate sauce to throw over the top. And over the top really is kind of the punchline from Napa Valley, California. Well, it doesn't have to be. But that particular meal, sure, I have to say, there's a richness, there's an intensity, and I just loved every bite. So, let's review where we are. I'm going to skip out on the San Francisco portion of the trip. I'll save that for another time because I had also there, there's a seafood place in San Francisco the Swan Oyster Depot. It's classic. And I would spend a lot of time talking about that, so I'm going to skip that one now and save that one. But man, they could open. I wish there was a Swan Oyster Depot. I think the closest we have actually is the Oyster Bar in Grand Central, close to kind of conceptually that kind of food. But no, Swan Oyster Depot, man, that's a legend, and boy is that good. Let's review, however, all the things I can recommend about Napa Valley, California, a place that you fly out there, you drive over there, you can drive around there, you can bike around there. I neglected to mention we took a hike one day. There's 3 or 4 places in Napa that you can go and hike and see the valley beneath you, depending on the level of intensity or workout that you want. There's a jazz club in Napa that you can go to. I mentioned there are hot air balloons, or maybe you're just happy visiting a couple of lovely villages, Napa, Yountville, taking in some jazz, going out for a delightful dinner, and deliciousness, and then wines and wine tours. A lot to do out there. It doesn't all have to be about the wine and the eating and the drinking. Lovely towns, the Oxbow Market, the hot air balloon, the Center for Contemporary Art, if that's your thing, the hikes, boat, kayak, or paddleboard on the Napa River, catch a live jazz at the Blue Note in Napa, and as I said, spa things, go take a mud bath in Calistoga, another lovely town. Love you, Napa, can't wait to get back. And I will continue to do my own driving and biking, including, as I said, going up US 1 into Marshall for awesome barbecued clams and that ride on the Marshall-Petaluma Highway in what could just as well be somewhere in Umbria, Italy. This is Robert Rosenthal, your professional recommender of delicious things to do, to eat, to see. Because life is delicious. And I will be back with you next week for episode number 74. Not sure what it's going to be yet. I do have another trip coming up, though. So maybe we'll talk about, Florida. See what's going on down there. In the meantime, I'm easy to find. Short Order Dad on the Twitter or on the Facebook. If you're an Instagram person and you want to see what's what, there's Real Rob Rosenthal on Instagram. Where else am I? That's where I'm at. Oh, and if you want to buy a book that I wrote about food that I learned in studying French technique, it's called Short Order Dad, One Guy's Guide to Making Food Fun and Hassle-Free. In the meantime, I would like to wake up. Jimmy is in the... Jimmy, thank you again for your production work on the show. I always sign out. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, life is short. So never waste a meal.